Mom, I swear I didn't do anything. He's lying. I still hear my own voice echoing in that kitchen, desperate, cracking, almost childish. And over it came my adopted brother's calm, rehearsed tone. She's just jealous, that's why she did it. The silence that followed was worse than the accusation itself. Dad's spoon clattered against his coffee cup. Mom's eyes shifted away, cold, measured, like she'd already made up her mind. Hi everyone, my name is Lena Brooks, I'm 27 now. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. Because sometimes lies don't just ruin lives, they erase them. Tell me, what would you do if your whole world turned its back on you before you even had a chance to defend yourself? That morning the house smelled like burnt toast and betrayal. My brother Mason, 17 like me, sat at the table with his innocent eyes and trembling hands, an act he'd perfected. He'd been caught skipping school, vandalizing a teacher's car, and somehow twisted it into my doing. He said I told on him, cost him his scholarship, his reputation. But the part that burned deepest was how easily my parents believed him. Lena, we raised you better than this, Dad said, voice heavy but decisive. Mom just muttered, we can't have this kind of toxicity in our home. I remember looking at them both, their faces I'd once loved more than my own reflection, and realizing love can vanish faster than trust. My boyfriend Ryan came over later pretending to be supportive. But when Mason's story spread across town, twisted into something darker, that I'd ruined his future out of envy, Ryan texted me a single line. Maybe it's better if we take a break. That was the moment I stopped crying. I packed a single duffel, grabbed the necklace my birth mother left me, and walked out. No apology. No goodbye. Only the sound of the front door closing, like a judge's gavel ending the trial of my life. And as I stepped into the night, I whispered to no one. I didn't do it. But one day, they'll know. If this ever happened to you, say, same in the comments. The bus smelled like gasoline and rain. I sat in the very last seat, hugging my duffel tight like it could protect me from the weight of everything I just lost. My phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls from Mom, not to check if I was okay but to make sure I'd taken my mess with me. The world outside blurred into streaks of yellow light and gray pavement. I remember counting every exit, wondering if any of them could lead me back to who I was before Mason's lie. But there was no way back, only forward. I landed in a small coastal town 6 hours away, where no one knew my name or my story. I got a job washing dishes at a diner, sleeping in a rented room that smelled like sea salt and bleach. Every night I'd stare at the ceiling and replay that moment. His smirk, my parents' silence. The ache never dulled. For months I avoided mirrors. I couldn't stand the look of the girl who was branded guilty without proof. But the sea had a strange way of talking to me. Loud waves, honest winds. One night after closing, my boss, an old woman named Elsie, handed me a cup of coffee and said, "Sometimes the truth takes the long road home, honey. But it gets there." I didn't know what she meant then. I just nodded, pretending to believe her. Years went by. I worked, saved, studied online at night. Built a life from scratch. A quiet one, small but mine. People came and went. I learned to smile again even if it felt borrowed. But on the 10th anniversary of the day I left, I got an email from a name I thought I'd erased forever. Subject: you need to know what happened to Mason. My hand froze over the keyboard. For the first time in 10 years my pulse felt like thunder. Because if Mason was reaching out, or if someone was writing about him, that meant the past I buried wasn't done with me yet. The email was from an unknown address. No greeting, no name, just a sentence that stopped my breath. He confessed. I stared at it for a long time, my hands trembling over the trackpad. A link followed, leading to a small-town news article. The headline read, "Local man admits to framing adopted sister in 10-year-old case." My throat closed. The words swam before my eyes, and suddenly the room felt too small to hold everything I was feeling. Anger, grief, vindication, exhaustion. The boy who ruined my life. The brother I once defended when others mocked him for being adopted. The same brother who smiled as I was cast out like trash. The article detailed a confession he made during a counseling session, later leaked through a court record. He'd admitted to lying about me, said he wanted attention, said I always had everything. He wanted to see if my parents would pick him for once. And they did. I slammed the laptop shut and sat in silence. My reflection in the dark screen looked older than I remembered. The years of running had carved lines that weren't there before. The next day the diner felt quieter. Elsie noticed my distant eyes and asked, "You see a ghost, sweetheart?" I smiled faintly. Something like that. For the first time in a decade, I typed my parents' names into a search bar. Their faces popped up on Facebook. Gray hair, softer eyes, but the same smiles I used to know. My mother had written a post beneath the same article. We're ashamed. We failed our daughter. If you're reading this, Lena, we're sorry. Sorry. That word, too late, too small. I closed the screen again and whispered, you can't apologize to ghosts. But that night, as the ocean winds roared outside my window, a knock echoed through the hallway, steady, urgent, and terrifyingly familiar. Someone had found me. The knock came again, 3 sharp raps that made the glass tremble in its frame. My breath caught. Nobody ever came to my door at that hour. Through the peephole I saw 2 shadows, a man and a woman standing close under the yellow porch light. My heart knew before my eyes did. Lena, please. It's us. Dad's voice. Older, slower, but still carrying that quiet authority that once ruled my life. Mom stood beside him, clutching her coat like armor. For a moment I thought I was hallucinating. 10 years of silence and suddenly, they were here. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. The air between us wasn't just wood and metal. It was 10 years of exile, of nights spent questioning my worth, of trust burned down to ash. Lena, Mom's voice cracked. We didn't know. Mason, he told us everything. We're so sorry, honey. Sorry. The same word again. Always too late, always too easy. I pressed my forehead against the door and whispered, do you remember the day you told me to pack my things? Silence. Do you remember saying I was toxic? A sob broke on the other side. We were wrong, Mom said. Please just talk to us. Every part of me wanted to scream, to fling the door open and demand to know why it took them a decade to believe me. But another part, the part that had rebuilt herself from nothing, stayed still. I glanced at the necklace on my dresser, the one from my birth mother. She told me once, when people show you how little they value truth, protect yours like gold. Through the door I said softly, you raised a liar and buried the wrong child. Dad tried to respond, but my voice had already steadied into something cold, final. Go home. You found the truth, now live with it. The porch light flickered as they hesitated, then footsteps retreated into the night. I didn't open the door. Not yet. But deep inside something shifted, the first crack of peace trying to make its way through the ruins. I barely slept that night. Every time the wind rattled the window, I imagined their faces again. Mom's trembling lips, Dad's defeated eyes. The guilt that should have been theirs had crept like smoke back into my lungs. By morning the sea was calm. The diner opened at 6 and I went in early, hands shaking as I poured coffee for the fishermen who always came before dawn. Their laughter filled the air, grounding me in a life that wasn't built on lies. But when Elsie came in and saw my face, she knew. They came, didn't they? She asked. I nodded. They want forgiveness. And do you? I looked out the fogged window. I don't even know what that word means anymore. The rest of the day passed like a blur. But when I returned home, an envelope sat under my door, my name written in my father's handwriting. Inside was a folded letter, yellow from rain, and a check for $50,000. Beneath it, in Mom's delicate script, for the years we stole from you. I laughed, the kind of laugh that tastes like tears. As if money could unerase 10 years of silence. Still I tucked the letter away. Not for the amount but as proof. Proof that they finally knew. That night I wrote something I hadn't in years. A letter. Not to them but to me. Dear Lena. You are no longer the girl who begged to be believed. You are the woman who survived without them. Let that be enough. The next morning I drove to the old pier where I used to sit as a teenager, wondering what life would look like if I vanished. I stood there now, wind pulling at my hair, sunlight kissing the water. And for the first time I didn't feel invisible. As I turned to leave, a familiar voice called behind me, hesitant, broken. Lena. I froze. It wasn't my parents. It was Mason. I didn't turn around right away. His voice hit me like a wave of static. Part memory, part nightmare. When I finally faced him, he looked nothing like the boy who'd smiled while destroying me. His hair was shorter, his face hollowed, eyes rimmed with guilt instead of arrogance. Lena, he said again, taking a careful step closer. I didn't know how to find you. I thought you'd never want to see me. I almost laughed. You're right. I don't. He flinched but didn't move. I was a kid. I was angry, jealous. You were cruel, I cut in. You didn't make a mistake, Mason. You chose it. You looked me in the eye and lied. His lips trembled. I know. I lost everything too. Mom and Dad, they can't look at me now. I tried to fix it, Lena. I told them. I told everyone. I studied him. The boy who'd once been my brother, now just a stranger holding pieces of guilt like offerings. You think truth fixes everything? You set fire to a house and now you're sorry there's smoke. He wiped his face, silent. For a moment I saw the scared teenager buried under the man. But pity was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. I just wanted you to know, he whispered. I never stopped thinking about what I did. You deserved better. The wind rose, scattering seagulls into the sky. I looked at him one last time and said quietly, I did. But I gave it to myself. He nodded, tears streaking down his face, then turned and walked away, slower, smaller with every step until the horizon swallowed him. The sea roared like applause behind me, waves crashing in rhythm with my heartbeat. I stood there until the sun dipped, until guilt turned into something else. Release. For the first time the truth wasn't heavy anymore. It was light. That night I didn't cry. I thought I would, but instead there was only stillness. The kind that comes after a storm when even the walls seem to breathe again. I sat by my window watching the waves shimmer beneath the moonlight and realized something strange. I no longer hated Mason. Hate was heavy. I'd carried it for a decade and it had shaped me, fed me, even kept me alive. But standing there with him, seeing his guilt, his ruin, I understood the quiet truth. Sometimes revenge isn't fire. It's absence. A week passed. My parents sent messages I never opened, calls I never answered. I didn't need to. The silence was its own reply. They knew where I was now, but they didn't know who I'd become, and that was my real victory. One evening Elsie came over with a pie and a smile. You look lighter, she said. Maybe I finally let something go. She chuckled. Or maybe it finally let you go. We sat on the porch listening to the ocean. The town lights flickered in the distance. Simple humankind. It hit me then how far I'd come from the girl who begged for love she already deserved. Later I walked to the pier again, this time with a small box in my hands. Inside was the necklace from my birth mother, the one I'd clung to through every dark night. I kissed it softly, then dropped it into the sea. Not as a goodbye, but as a promise. To myself. As I turned back toward home my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. The preview read, "We're outside. Please, just one last chance." The ocean wind stilled. My fingers hovered over the screen. But this time I didn't feel fear or anger. Only clarity. I locked the phone, placed it face down on the railing and whispered to the night, "You already had your last chance." And then I walked home. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the floor like forgiveness I hadn't asked for. I brewed coffee, not in a rush, not hiding from the world, just breathing. 10 years ago I would have checked my phone before anything else. Now it sat silent on the counter, full of unread messages that no longer controlled me. I stepped outside and found a small envelope pinned to my door. No name this time, just shaky handwriting I instantly recognized. Inside was a photo, me and Mason when we were kids, covered in cake at my 8th birthday. On the back he'd written 3 words. "I'm still sorry." I smiled faintly and tucked it into my pocket. There was no anger left, only understanding. Sometimes the ones who break you aren't monsters, just weak. And weakness can be louder than hate. Down by the pier the waves were calmer than I'd ever seen them. Fishermen laughed in the distance, their voices carrying over the water. I stood there, closing my eyes, and imagined the girl I used to be, standing in that same spot, terrified, small, waiting for someone to save her. But she didn't need saving anymore. I'd become my own rescue. When I walked back home I opened the window wide and let the ocean air fill every corner of my little apartment. The guilt, the memories, even the echoes of my parents' voices, they all dissolved into the hum of the sea. I sat at my desk and wrote a final note. To the family that once threw me away. You taught me pain. I turned it into peace. You taught me silence. I turned it into strength. And though you may never hear my voice again, know this. I forgive you. Not for you but for me. Then I sealed the letter and slid it into the drawer beside the old envelope and check, relics of a life I'd outgrown. Outside, gulls circled in the sky, their cries fading into the wind, free, weightless, unbound. And for the first time so was I. And that's how a single lie destroyed a life. And 10 years later the truth knocked, but she didn't open the door. Broken heart. Would you have opened it? Could you forgive the people who disowned you when you needed them most? If your parents threw you away because of someone else's lie, would you still let them back in when the truth finally came out? Lena didn't seek revenge with anger. She did it with silence. She built her own peace. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is living well without them. But tell me honestly, if it were you in her place, what would you do? Would you forgive your brother? Would you ever trust your parents again? Or would you walk away quietly just like Lena did? Speech balloon, drop your thoughts below. I'm reading every comment. Red heart, if this story touched your heart, say, same in the comments. Fire and tell me, do you believe some wounds can ever truly heal, or do we just learn to live with the scars? Your answers might become the next story.